off and running here on Overdrive. It is Friday, Mail-In Friday, brought to you by Boston Pizza's new game day menu. Stop by your local BP for $7 touchdown pine, shareables for the whole crew, and weekly prizing up for grabs. Football game days are better at your local BP. Mike DiStefano filling in for Brian Hayes and Dave Feschuk in for Noodles and O. And, you know, it was a pretty big sports night last night. There's a lot to get into today, obviously. And I don't know, I found it very difficult. What's your setup when you got a night like last night? You got the Leaf game, you got a Raptors game, you got a Thursday night football game. Are you a triple screen, dual screen watcher? Like, how do you, an astute journalist that's been on the scene for years, how do you go about watching all of that at once?
It was tricky. I mean, good thing the football game was terrible.
Yeah.
And it was easy to turn away from that. But,
Fair.
you know, look, you're flipping back and forth. You got usually have one game on the laptop in my lap, another game on the big screen.
Yeah.
I haven't done the multi-screen kind of endeavor just yet in my living room. I don't think my wife would allow me to get away with that.
AK's got that in his condo. I was there not too long ago, and he's got two massive screens, so you can watch one game. He's probably watching right now on his condo. He's got probably OverDrive, us on both screens. You can almost guarantee it's happening. But he'll have the Raptors game on one side, the football game on the other, and then every now and then he'll put on, a Leaf game plan, however he does it. But he's got two, 60-inchers. I'm like, how do you even watch both games when you've got two massive TVs like that?
That's the thing.
But there's so many people that do it that way. But there was a lot of great games last night. I mean, obviously the Leafs game was getting most of our attention, and for the most part, I thought the Leafs played well. There was spots during the game where maybe they were giving up a little bit too much and being a little too loosey-goosey. But ultimately, they got the win. The Stolarz injury definitely is a little bit of a bummer. But 2 points is 2 points. And
right.
They beat the no-name goalie once again.
Yes, they did. I think, according to the Toronto Sun, of course, those little deviants down at the Sun tweaking the Anaheim fans and crowd. But
it's a good goalie, though.
He's good. He's been one of the best in the league if you kind of look at some of the metrics, right? Even though the team's not very good, he keeps it out more than most.
There was a few opportunities that Matthews had last night, like that one in tight. Right, I thought for sure that was going to be a goal. And here's the thing with Auston Matthews, and I think was it last night or maybe the game before, Craig Berube was asked about him and the fact that he's been, I think it was after the Devils game actually, and he finally did score on one of the 5 breakaways he had in that game. And last night, he had 6 shots on goal and a couple were in tight, good high danger chances. This year, it just seems like those goals aren't going in for him like they were a year ago. And again, last night, really good goalie, made some great stops on him. But I'm curious if that's becoming a bit of a concern for you at all when it comes to Auston Matthews. The drop-off in production for him has been a big reason as to why the team's 5-on-5 scoring has been down.
Oh, without a doubt.
Massive reason why.
It's a massive reason. It's the largest reason why. We can talk about Max Domi doesn't have a goal, and Bob McMahon's been hurt, and all the secondary scoring concerns that are legitimate. Like Craig Berube has mentioned it more than once, that they need some scoring down the lineup. They wouldn't mind a little more scoring from the defenseman, but that's another story. But ultimately, the biggest reason why they're not scoring like they did last year is because Matthews is not scoring like he did last year, and that's a concern. Anytime your number one guy is not humming like he can hum, it's a scary thing for the Maple Leafs. And the fact he's been to Germany, he's not quite himself. He doesn't look quite as electric. The shot doesn't look as
crisp.
Awe-inspiring.
It just isn't as crisp as it was a year ago.
Yeah.
And I think 30 games into the season, it's almost teetering on it being a concern at this point. If it was still, game 7 of the season, okay, he's still working his way in. He didn't play the whole preseason. He did get hurt, and he only got into 2 games, I think, in the preseason. You could make the argument that he's still getting his legs underneath him. And I suppose you could say it, but he's been back now for 7-8 games. He should be operating at his elite pace at this point. And the weird thing is, the numbers, analytically, it's looking all right. He's still getting those opportunities, just not finishing. The shooting percentage, I think right now is sub 10%. He's a 16% shooter career-wise. That's another big, it's just not finishing. And I'm not sure if it's still injury related. Is there still something bothering him? Or is it just one of those years where it's just bad puck luck?
Yeah.
Curious. Why don't we ask our main man, Mike Johnson joining us now on the Maple Toyota hotline. What's going on, Johnny?
What's going on, fellas? It's interesting. I hear you talking about it, and you run the numbers, and you know, maybe like I agree with you. Like he should probably just turn it around because he's generating chances still. But I will say this is ridiculous. I'd have to probably check the NHL Edge stats, but by just the eye test, when you're down there, the shot seems to have been a little less zippy this year. Not finding the back of the net for Auston Matthews, but just a little less pop on his shot. I wonder if the injury, whatever he was fighting that he went to Europe for, was something that is still sort of maybe slowing down his release, maybe just velocity or just the time it takes to get it off or whatever. It's just a little bit. Still elite, but I mean, they're not quite best in the world right now.
Yeah, well, it's, the bottom line is, MJ, they've been winning without, his electric performances. They certainly won with him out of the lineup, and they're doing a pretty good job of it with him in the lineup, even if he hasn't been Mr. 69 goal pace. But to switch topics to the one of the day, MJ, do you believe that the Maple Leafs were sort of tempting fate by throwing Anthony Stolarz in net last night, a couple of nights after a very high workload occasion beating New Jersey?
I mean, I understand the Monday morning quarterbacking about this decision, but what are you going to do? It was 2 days off. They just had 2 days off before that. Him and Woll have been sort of alternating game on, game off.
Johnny's played 6 games. Goalie. 6 games in the last 30 days.
So I'm saying, it's nothing. So if you are tempting fate, and I get what you're saying, and perhaps you are right. The same thing would be said for Woll if he plays 2 games in a row. Anyone who has a history of not being entirely healthy will, if you play him 2 games in a row, 1 game after a busy night, that I guess you're tempting fate. I don't think that they were reckless, careless. As long as Stolarz was completely forthright and upfront that he wasn't tight, that he wasn't tired, that he didn't have any sort of tweaky thing hanging on, that he wanted to play anyways, as long as that was the case and he acted and told everyone he was 100% healthy, then no. I think it's just reflexive. He got hurt. They should have done something different thinking. It was always going to be a story for both these guys. That's the reality. Neither one of them has played 50 games in a season, and both have had a history of injuries at times in their careers, and that was always going to be part of the story. And we've seen Woll miss time, and now we may see Stolarz miss a little bit of time, but I don't think you can get on the Leafs for the decision they made to start him last night.
In conversation with Mike Johnson, our TSN Hockey analyst. Obviously, that was the big story last night, but the secondary story, I thought, was the play of Max Pacioretty and the line of Pacioretty, Tavares, and William Nylander. Why do you think it's worked out so well this season with Pacioretty? Went healthy, I guess, the injury aside, but when he's been playing, he's been fairly productive. He's been very physical. Just seems to be a perfect fit for Craig Berube's system.
Well, I think there's a couple of different parts to it. One is, you're right, you said system. And Max Pacioretty, at his state and age of his career, is not a guy who wants to rip up and down trading rush chances. His greatest strength is probably his strength and his size and his willingness to be a guy who goes and bangs bodies. Like, a guy who goes in there and hits and gets physical and runs over Jack Hughes, and we've seen him take penalties for boarding that were rescinded. Like, he's got a mentality, even though he's been a scorer his whole life, that he wants to be the guy who goes in and is super physical and get the puck back for his wingers. I give him full credit. It's not always easy to make that transition when you haven't had to play that way throughout your career. And then you got to give his line mates credit, because largely speaking, when you play him with Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander, they do so much work to get the puck up the ice, to get the puck to the front of the net, to get the puck to the spots that Pacioretty can still be effective with. Like, he's scoring goals from 4 feet out because other guys are getting the puck 4 feet out. So in that sense, it's been a good fit. And as long as he can stay healthy, and as long as he plays those good players, he'll chip in enough goals because he's got the brain and the hockey sense to get in the right spots frequently enough.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I mean, when you look at that, the physicality that Pacioretty brings, MJ. I mean, you're a big skill guy. I know you're an analytics guy, and you've occasionally cast aspersions at the value of sort of wanton hitting. But this guy is on hits per 60. He's second on the team to Ryan Reeves. I mean, that's how frequently he's been out there, searching out opponents to lay a body on. I mean, do you see a lot of value there? Like, or what are you seeing in terms of what his physicality is bringing to this team?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, I'd like to think, I appreciate the role that physicality can be playing, but I'm also aware that I'd rather have the puck and not have to hit people than be chasing hits because I don't have it. And I think there's a danger where you fall in love with hitting stats because you never have the puck. The reason why Detroit Red Wings never hit anyone in the 90s, not because they only had skill players, it's because they always had it. And you'd rather be that than the alternative. But when you are playing a system that asks you to dump it in, go forecheck, turn pucks over, and try to grind out offensive chances, somebody has to go and hit and stop the puck. And the fact of the matter is Max Pacioretty is good at it because he is a surprise. I've been around Max Pacioretty his entire career. I always thought of it as sort of like rangy and big, but not really big, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you're around him now, and I stand there between the benches. I'm like, the guy, he's big. He's 6'4". He's 220 pounds. He's a big player. And he, in this system, plays a pivotal role because, dumping it in does no good unless you can get it back. And one of the ways you have to get it back is by going to hit people. And he's figured that out, and he brings value because of it.
Johnny, it looks like Bobby McMahon is scheduled to return this weekend. David Kampf not too far behind. What do you expect this bottom six to kind of look like when this team's fully healthy?
Well, this is the trick. So now, I guess you're going to walk through it, and it's going to be the top six will likely stay the same, right? The big four, Nyes makes a big five, and then there's a swing person in that other spot. Could be Domi, could be McMahon, or it could be Pacioretty. Right now, it's going to stay with Pacioretty. So now your third-line wingers will be McMahon and Max Domi with Fraser Minton, I suppose, and that turns your fourth line into Kampf when healthy, Lorentz, and whoever else. I don't mean whoever else dismissively, but sometimes Reeves, sometimes Dewar, depending on the opponent, depending on what's going on. Maybe it's Holmberg, whatever it might be. I think that's probably how it shakes out until they make a definitive decision on whether Fraser Minton can help them long term.
Do you think?
And I don't think that jury's still out. I don't think they've decided. I think they appreciate the responsibility and mature nature of his game. And I know he's got his 4 points in his 8 or 9 games or whatever he's played. Underlyings are not super strong for him. The shot shares haven't been the greatest. The expected goal share haven't been the greatest. Now, put him with different wingers and you get a better sense, right? Like playing with Holmberg and whoever, Lorentz is not going to probably tilt the ice all the time. Playing with McMahon and Domi, you expect a little bit more push with the puck, and that's what they are still waiting to see. And I think that's probably exactly how they shake it out. And then there'll be moments where Pacioretty slides down, he plays with the third line, McMahon goes back up there, or maybe Max goes back up there. Maybe Max plays in the middle. Like, they'll fiddle with that stuff. They have the big 5 forwards, if I put Nyes on it, somebody else, and then the depth guys will play in the third line, and the fourth line will be Kampf, Lorentz, and somebody else.
MJ, wanted to get your take on the goings-on in Philly last night. The Flyers beat the Red Wings 4-1, and Matvei Michkov in a highlight reel play that nearly was a highlight reel play, probably still was played on the highlights, tried the Michigan, and this is how John Tortorella reacted in the aftermath of that.
I've lost the battle, right? I don't come off with it. I don't think it should be in our game, but I've lost that battle. I have talked to him early in the year when he was doing it every time. It was just turnovers. The thing I want Mish to understand is he's such a good player moving a puck and passing a puck. When he's behind the net, he's dangerous to make plays. So, what am I going to do? Say, don't do it? What I did, I said, you need to understand that there are other plays to be made there too, because a number of the times he tried it early in the year, all they were turnovers. So, yeah, I've lost the damn battle with that. I'm not going to try to fight it. I don't come off what I feel about it. I don't think it should be in our game, but it is what it is.
Where are you on that one, MJ?
Okay, so I'm going to have to parse my old coach's words carefully here. I can actually appreciate what he's saying, and that he's right, is that if you do it haphazardly, it can be a turnover, and that's something that they want to avoid. That makes sense to me. There's a time and place to attempt that move, and it's not every single time. I agree with that. I've lost that battle. Okay, I appreciate that because I think when you're older, whether you're older like me or older like Torts, younger players, younger people have different ideas and thoughts about the way things should be, and you have to adapt with it if you want to stay relevant with those people that you're working with. So that's probably not a bad idea. But it's probably several things. Whether you can have your phone on the plane is probably a battle Torts wanted to fight at one point. He's lost that battle because that's not the world. I'm okay with that too. The comment that this should not be my game is so preposterously dinosaur-esque. I don't even know where to begin. I guess, did you see Barkov in the shootout the other day? He went to fake through the legs and then went back to his backhand and scored.
Yeah.
Should that not be part of the game? Should we outlaw that? Like, what are we talking about? The Forsbergs get done mid-game? Should we outlaw that? How about we outlaw the saucer pass? How about we outlaw the forward pass? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, this is hockey. This is skill. This is not trick plays anymore. And he knows this because these players have grown up doing these things. It's not, something that they're doing for being fancy. It's not something they can't do every single time. They can do all these different things all the time. We see Matvei Michkov score goals through his leg all the time. Would John Tortorella tell him, "No, that should not be part of our game"? That's ridiculous. The other stuff, actually, he has a point. Like, he has a point about time and place and, recognizing when you should maybe try some of these things. But to suggest that they should not even be part of the game, and Torts is a good coach, and Torts is a good man.
Yeah, for sure.
That is a line of thinking that I think almost plagues hockey in general, not just from Torts, but this whole clinging to the past and the change and the modernization and the fun and the creativity. That should all be embraced, not sort of downplayed and dismissed.
Well, the only thing about the Michigan, MJ, and we were talking about this at the rink the other day, and a couple of the Leafs were chiming in, is that it's not working very often. Right.
Well, how often do you score goals from behind the net? Period.
Well, no. That's an interesting point. But I mean,
like, relative to what? Relative to a bump past the point in the slapper?
Well, and I guess the other point is that, Talbot on that play, Cam Talbot really got the shoulder up. He basically cut it off. Like, the goalies are wise to it now,
Goalies are wise to it. Guys lead with their sticks high up in the air now. They're not sort of frozen with their stick on the ice because they've never seen this before. Yeah, and then they'll do something different because they'll go with, I've seen junior kids and college kids and high school age kids run fake Michigans and wraparounds and fake Michigans to passes. And, there are extensions to what we're talking about. And that's where the world is headed. So, yeah, you don't do anything that doesn't work, fancy or plain. But that's part of the evolution of the game. To suggest that anything that's creative, that looks different, doesn't have a place in the game, that's no good.
There were a couple of great coaching tirades last night. You had the one on Torts there. Marty St. Louis had some interesting comments, but my favorite of the night was Patrick Waugh. And I don't know.
I liked it.
I liked it too.
I said the same thing on air real time, AB. I was on air last night at NHL Network, and we're watching the game. I'm like, oh my gosh, the other one's going to blow this? No, it's too late. But I did say, who's going to be pissed off? Sorokin. Because goaltenders hate garbage time goals against.
Yeah.
Because the players, it doesn't bother us so much unless you're the one who makes the mistake. Because, what, if it's a plus or minus, whatever, we're going to win. It's all good. Life's good. For the goaltenders who live and die with every goal against, and they care about their stats and how they're, impacted individually, they hate that stuff. So for Patrick Waugh to say, in my day and age, if you would have played that garbage defense in the last minute to give up 2 goals to lose 5-4 instead of 5-2, I would have come at you in the dressing room. I completely appreciate what he's saying. Like, I played with Sean Burke, one of my favorite players, one of the best goalies I ever played with. Absolutely fiery competitor. And he would have not maybe beat me up, but he would have gone into the ear of the players in the room for that, not just out of a selfish nature, but also out of, let's have some professionalism to finish the game off for everybody, not just for me. I totally get it. And it's actually probably more common than Patrick Waugh made it sound.
Well, let's talk about Marty St. Louis as well, MJ, because we've seen the Canadians lose 6-2 this year. They've lost 7-2. They've lost 8-2. but it wasn't until last night that they lost 9-2 after only being down 3-2 at the second intermission. Like, what did you make of that collapse?
Giving up 6 in the third period?
It's tough.
That's almost hard to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I play on bad teams, and I know it could happen, but that is as much and even Jake Evans sort of acknowledged it. He said, I don't know what happened. We gave up or something. And it's giving up's a strong word, but they stopped taking great pride and care in the result because the result got away from them. Once it got sort of 5-2, then the will to battle left for the rest of that game from everyone. Sometimes it could be one player who's out of an off night, but everyone. I think that's the greater concern where they sort of just threw in the towel and hung out. Poor Caden Primo, he goes in there, he gets lit up for 3 in like 8 minutes or whatever it was. Like, come on, guys. Same sort of sentiment for Sorokin. Like, let's help each other out here. I'm not going to say it's an indictment and that group of players is a bunch of losers. Like, that's not true. But in that moment, that was not a professional approach for themselves and for their teammates in the third period.
Caden Primo, .571 save percentage, 1636 goals against average.
And listen, if you like, Primo's had a tough year there.
Yeah,
and he could like, I know it was so strange. Montembeault got pulled with 10 minutes left in the game. No one ever gets pulled after 50 minutes. If you make it to 50, you make it to 60.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
Exactly.
But Primo, when he went in there,
probably checked
he could
out.
use a little love. Like, he could use a couple. Like, give him 10 good minutes. And it's not like Pittsburgh would be like completely throwing the kitchen sink at the Habs. But it's 6-2. They're sort of just playing out the string as well. But if you're going to give them chances, they'll take them. And, he gets hung out to dry there. So, not good. Montreal, they have some games where you're like, okay, there's some strides there. Then they have some games like last one, and you're like, no, they're a million miles away still.
Somehow Gino was a -1 in that game, too. How do you a -1 in a 9-2
I got a better for you. You can look it up. Last game of the 1999 season, we're playing Toronto and Florida. I was actually suspended for the game due to a vicious elbow because I'm a goon. But we were playing Florida, and they had emptied their roster. So, their entire American League team was up. And Sean Burke was in net for Florida. We won 10-1. And my guy, one of my favorite teammates of all time, Todd Warner, 10-1. -1, no points. Oh man, you talk about sourness at postgame from a guy who was really happy-go-lucky. That was it. Because you're like, how is that even possible? How can I even do that? Oh, we almost felt bad for him. Almost.
Couldn't have got him the phantom assist at some point.
Something. Straight second one.
How many times did you get a chance to watch Macklin Celebrini play before he got to the NHL? A couple of times, right? Juniors and then championships.
Yeah, I covered the World Junior the whole time. Absolutely, and he's awesome. And I've said this before, so it's not sort of hyperbole. It's not sort of reactive. The thought being, he's got a chance to not maybe be a better scorer than Connor Bedard, but maybe a better player. Like a more complete player, because he has an element of power and speed to his game, like a strength element that Bedard doesn't have. Bedard, as great as Celebrini shoots it, Bedard probably shoots it better, but Celebrini can skate. And when you go around the league, AB, and I'm traveling around, I talk to different players or different media or staff, coaches, whatever, who have played San Jose, they talk about him being way better than they thought he was. Than he thought he would be right away. Like, they're glowing positive reviews for how good he is already in the NHL, just, whatever he's 20 games into his career.
Oh, and the crazy part is he got hurt in his first game and then had to miss a couple of weeks, and then he comes back and he's been a point-per-game player ever since. Like, the guy is truly exceeding all expectations. And I think it's probably because there was so sky-high expectations on Connor Bedard, generational talent. So it kind of made Celebrini not look as sexy as a prospect. But man, like, this guy really could be just as good a player. It feels an overall player, at least.
Yeah. And I think there's the idea, like, Bedard, for what he did at the World Junior Tournament, was just, mind-bogglingly best of all time. And the numbers he put up in Regina, and the other guys who did that were like Eric Lindros and like Connor McDavid and guys who were the greatest players of their generation. players who come out of college, having won the Hobey Baker as a freshman, is that there's been a couple guys. Jack Eichel, did he win the Hobey Baker as a freshman? He might have.
Think so.
Right? But Jack Eichel didn't go to the NHL and get 95 points and 40 goals. Right? Like, I think the direct comparison to what he was coming from to what he was supposed to be able to do was not as clean as Bedard. And he hadn't been in the spotlight for as many years as Bedard. And so you're right. I absolutely think the expectation, whatever the standard that was going to be, it was lower for him. But maybe as impressively, it's not like he's doing it with a ton of support around it. Like the Sharks are playing great, give him full credit. But that's not a fantastic roster just yet.
No.
So he's a driving force behind what they're doing well, and that is so impressive.
Well, that's it. Like, it was Bedard, and it was, well, there's no one around him. He's got no help. It's like Celebrini, same situation, but he seems to be putting up points. So
MJ,
Bedard had 3 last night.
Yeah, he did.
Sorry, MJ. I was just saying, it sounds like AB is trying to corner the market on Celebrini trading cards.
Hoard in, AB, whatever you need to do.
The pump and dump. He's pumping up the value as we speak.
Exactly. He's a day trader for stocks right now. Exactly. But the other part about this, the other side of this conversation, and it's one worth having, is that we've sort of been critical of Bedard's production, of his play, of Chicago's play, of him not on the Four Nations. What does Bedard have right now? Does he have 26 points in 29 games? I don't even have it in front of me.
But
whatever, like he's just under a point a game player, playing for a crap team.
24 and 29.
24 and 29, crap team in a crap situation, and he's on pace for 70 points. And that's him being terrible? Pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad at all.
That's a better point per game pace than John Tavares?
In that range.
Or virtually the same. And we are celebrating Tavares for being like how much he deserves to be on the Four Nations and how great he's been. And I'm like, it's about expectations, of course. And I'm not saying it's not just points, it's not playing, but I think largely both guys are getting evaluated because of their points and not a lot of other situations. So, yeah, it hasn't been good, but even his not so good, it's pretty darn good.
Oh, it is. This is not a conversation to down Bedard. He's still playing well. I just think Celebrini's definitely putting himself in a higher echelon than maybe we thought. Johnny, appreciate...
I would be curious, AB, real quick.
Yeah.
We'll never know this, and I don't think it was that close, but like, who would have been closer to make the Four Nations today? Bedard or Celebrini?
Based on how they chose that team, where they kind of took a couple of role players, you would think maybe Celebrini, no?
I would think so.
Yeah.
We'll never know,
right.
But maybe we'll find out for the Olympics where they both make it. Or maybe they won't. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll find out. All right, Johnny, appreciate it as always, pal. Have a good weekend.
All right, boys. Have a good weekend.
There he goes. Mike Johnson joining us on the Maple Toyota hotline. Check out Maple Toyota's huge truck and SUV lineup, including Tundra, 4Runner Highlander, and Grand Highlander in stock and ready to deliver. Visit mapletoyota.com. Going to get to the filter coming up next.
All right.
Here on OverDrive, up on TSN 4 and on TSN 1050.
No filter?
You have no filter.
That's
quite obvious.
That's true. That's a good
Just
thing.
say whatever comes into your mind.
Yeah.
You don't really modulate your feelings at all. I'll tell you.
It's a good thing for me, but it's a bad thing for water.
All right, it's time for the filter here on OverDrive. I'm Mike DeStefano with Dave Feschuk, and we haven't done a filter in a while here on the show, but with me filling in for Hazy B today, we figured what better time than to chuck the filter into the rotation. And look, the way it works, it's pretty simple. We got takes. There's a couple I have. We farmed a couple from our listeners as well. And we got to decide, is this take, do we send the tweet, tuck the tweet in the drafts, or is this just such an awful take, a bad tweet, that you just need to straight up delete your account? So those are the three options that we got for this segment. And why don't we start off with the first one here?
Love it.
Looking up at Juan Soto. Juan Soto just signed a big monster deal, 15 years, $765 million. Soto was a luxury piece for the Yankees. They're a better team with what they've done this winter with the money he left on the table.
Wow.
What do you think about that one?
You know what? I'm going to put that in the drafts. I'm going to put that in the drafts. Now, let's say, I'll say one thing about Juan Soto.
Yeah.
Money is the only thing he has left on the table if we're talking about a dinner table. Did you see that little paunch he was rolling? Maybe that not so little paunch he was rolling at the Mets press conference.
I did.
If he would have signed with the Blue Jays and rolled into town with that paunch, they would have called him Juan Soto because he'd been spending a lot of time eating some quality food. But I like that kind of concerns me on a 15-year deal. The guy can't stay in shape, through a couple months of the offseason. But to your point, the pitching that the Yankees have added, the reason I'm keeping it in the drafts is because you can't be a better team without one of the best hitters in the game hitting in front of Aaron Judge. That combination was the one of the chief reasons why the Yankees were who they were last year, a team that got to the World Series and might have won it if not for that ridiculous fifth inning in the game that killed them. But adding the pitching they've with Fried and now Williams, a great starter and an elite reliever on a team that needed that kind of shoring up of their staff. I mean, that is an incredible value play, and it might be better value than the 765 in the long haul when you talk about one bat who benefited greatly from hitting in front of Aaron Judge.
Yeah, and I guess we'll never know. I guess, in an alternate universe when he re-signs with the Yankees, what happens over the course of the years. But I don't know. Like, I look at this team and I just think they had offense. Like, they've got home run ball hitters. Like, they've got hitters in Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge. Like, they can hit the baseball. Where they lacked last year was pitching. Like, they just could not pitch. And then the defense was horrible as well, obviously. You look at what happened in the fifth inning there. But to me, you bring in a guy like Fried, you bring in a guy like Devin Williams, and all of a sudden, they can pitch. And in the AL East, pitching is key. And in baseball in general, they always say pitching wins you baseball games.
Yeah.
And that's what they lacked, and that's what they used the money to go out and get. It's almost like, here in Toronto, we talk about with the Leafs all the time for years. They had way too much money on offense, and they had no defense, and they did not win hockey games. Now they decide to put a little bit of money on the back end, and what's happening? They're winning hockey games.
Yeah.
They got good goaltending, and it's a result of great defense in front of them. They've balanced out their lineup a little bit. You look at the Yankees, they've balanced out offense, pitching, and I think that they might be better off for it. I really, really do.
All right, good start.
All right, let's move on to the next one that we're taking a look at. We're going to head to the NBA, and it's our guy, Scotty Barnes. Life without Scotty began last night for the Toronto Raptors. Didn't turn out well. They got dummied by the Heat 114-104. But here's the tweet. Scotty Barnes' injury is the best thing that could ever happen to the Raptors this season. And obviously this is in reference to the fact that this team would have a much better chance at a lottery pick without Barnes there and will basically just go in full tank mode.
Send the tweet. I mean, I'm on board with going to the pooper for Cooper. Sagging
Pooper
for flag.
Cooper.
Sagging
Ever capture the flag. I haven't heard Pooper for Cooper
yet.
It's
a good one. It's a good one.
I like it.
Look, I mean, no one wants to see what happened to Scotty Barnes happen to Scotty Barnes. So don't get it wrong. I'm not cheering for injuries. But there's a little bit of that front office in Raptorland that can't be particularly sad. I mean, the health of their players aside, and they wish good health in their players, but they can't be particularly sad to see their lineup at less than full strength for whatever reason, whether it be a broken orbital bone like Scotty Barnes suffered or a torn UCL ligament like Emmanuel Quickly's certainly presently dealing with. Whatever it is that makes you not quite as good, whatever it is that makes you a team that can stay in games but not win games, that's a nice recipe for a dignified tank. And right now, they're in the midst of what looks like a very dignified tank, in part because they're having some bad injury luck.
It's been awful injury luck. They're probably, I haven't seen the numbers specifically, but I would imagine that they've got to be up there when it comes to man games lost this season.
Yeah, they're first in the Eastern Conference. The other day I checked that one.
And I actually would probably tuck this one into the drafts a little bit. It's not quite delete your account because there is a benefit to it. Like there's some positives and some negatives, but honestly, this is a pretty pivotal season for Scotty Barnes. It's not great that a guy you're hoping becomes your franchise player ends up with another injury and is going to miss a few weeks here of significant time. And then it's probably going to take him a couple weeks to get going again. Like it's an ankle injury. It's not, that's something that he's probably going to have to manage throughout the rest of the season when he gets back, I would imagine. And it's a pivotal development year for him and for the team to see what they look like all together. So without him in the lineup to see what it all looks like, to properly evaluate this team, I think it's not the best thing that could happen to the team. I do think that there is a little bit of some negativity that comes with it, and it's pretty much you're not getting a proper evaluation of what this team is.
That is the downside, but still a good thing when it comes to the lottery odds.
If they get there, that's like if they don't end up with Cooper Flagg, is it worth it, or is it only if they get the top pick and win the lottery?
Yeah, but as you know about the lottery odds, brother, you got to have a ticket to win it.
They'll have a ticket regardless.
Yeah,
that's
you
the
want
thing.
the odds to be as.
Yeah.
I know the odds are flat, but you got to be in that bottom 4, bottom 5 to maximize them. And right now they are.
All right, next one. This one comes from a listener. This is from Purchase Dave on Twitter, and he believes that Mitch Marner will be a more beloved Maple Leaf than Auston Matthews when their careers with Toronto are over.
Ooh.
What do we think about this one? Mitch Marner, will he be the more beloved Leaf over 69-goal man, captain of your Toronto Maple Leafs?
Yeah.
Quite the take.
I mean, it's not really a take. It's like it's a look into the future. It's a crystal ball. It's a forecast more than an opinion. And look, we would love to believe that both these guys will be beloved if this team can actually do what it's supposed to do in the playoffs and actually take this fan base on the thrill ride it's long deserved deep into the Stanley Cup tournament. But we just haven't seen it. So until we see that thrill ride, until they take us on that journey, there's nobody that's going to be as beloved as the guys who've done it in the past, guys who took them to the precipice of a Stanley Cup final, and heck, the guys, many of whom are now dead, who took them to a Stanley Cup in 1967. You can't get into that echelon of beloved in this town with the Wendells and the Dougies.
Well, they didn't win either, though.
No, but they got deep.
Yes, they won some games.
They gave people thrills. They gave this town excitement in the playoffs, which just hasn't happened here. But for that one shining moment and very brief moment in the wake of beating Tampa a couple of years back. So, yeah, I'd love, it's a toss-up. Like, it depends on who's the bigger hero and the bigger moment. Probably is who will go down as the bigger legend, but that story's yet to be written.
Yeah, I'm going to end the tweet, though. I think I'm going to end the tweet. And just like how quickly we forget. Like, this guy was enemy number one in the summer. Almost every single Maple Leaf trade blogger out there was coming up with trade chips and trades to send this guy out of town. Almost everyone on Twitter hated Mitch Marner and wanted him gone. And now all of a sudden we got people coming out here saying, oh, he's going to be more beloved than Auston Matthews. Auston Matthews decided to come back with this team, and at what we would, you could argue, at a bit of a discount at $13.25 million. You could argue that.
There,
he apparently left money on the table. I'm just saying.
Okay.
But this is a guy who scored 69 goals for this team. Scored 60 a couple years ago, had 50 and 50. There's been a lot of moments that Auston Matthews has provided, and he's now the captain of this team. Mm-hmm. Go out there and take a look. You're down at Leaf games. When you look down, do you see more 34 or 16 jerseys?
There's more 34s.
More 34
jerseys.
More. A lot more of those. And it's because he scores more goals. And he's the captain. And he's the big dog. I don't think... I just don't believe that Mitch Marner will be able to... And especially, we'll see how this contract conversation goes this summer. Because if it is as contentious as the first one was... then I think even more so, Leaf fans going to turn on it. But there have been so many instances where Leaf fans have turned on Mitch Marner. Can you really think of one time where the Leafs have tried to run Matthews out of the city? I can't.
No. But I mean, I still believe though that if something happens that becomes legendary, like, hey, how about they win a Stanley Cup? I won't even Could that, they're in the running. They're in the league that has the Stanley Cup, right?
Right,
still,
of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
So if they win the Stanley Cup and he is the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, Mitch Marner is, then he probably becomes a more beloved figure than everybody who wasn't a Conn Smythe Trophy winner in the time they win the Stanley Cup for the first time after the longest Stanley Cup drought in the history of the sport. So that's the only way it can happen. I think that's what that tweet was driving at, is that there is a future in which that could happen. I agree with you. Right now, it's not reality.
I just don't think it's likely to happen. That's where I took that. I think it's more likely that Matthews becomes the more beloved Maple. Is it possible? Sure. But I think it's more likely, if I had to put money down on FanDuel, if you went and did Family Feud, 100 people were asked, who's your favorite Maple Leaf of the, Matthews Marner era? I bet you there'd be more answers that say Matthews than Marner 20 years from now.
But if I'm a betting man, if I'm making odds, I agree with you. Matthews is the favorite to be that guy, but I still think that job is open, man. Like nobody has filled that job.
All right.
Playoff hero for a playoff winner in Toronto. No one's ever done it.
Did you say is John Tavares at that point? Is he the leader in the race for the overtime winner against Tampa?
Hey, that gets you a lot.
Defining moment.
That gets you a lot of mileage.
Yeah.
Gets you a lot. Now, first round wins aren't going to carry the same weight as later round wins, but you got to start somewhere. That is a good start to a legendary career. Sadly, it ended in a very big thud.
Very abruptly.
In 5 games against Florida, and that's why we don't look at that very fondly, or as fondly as we might have looked at it if they'd gone on a deeper run.
Your Gudas getting booed last night, like every time he touched the puck.
Yeah. I mean,
people don't like Radko Gudas in the city.
You take him on your team.
There's been a lot of times where the Leafs have tried to bring in a Radko Gudas-like player. You probably would take him on your team. All right, maybe we'll do a couple of filters after dark throughout the show, but we got to go. Still to come, we're going to be joined. Luke Wilson coming up. We got our NFL picks. We'll dive back into the Thursday Nighter last night, get his thoughts on the whole Devondre Campbell situation. And Javon Shepard going to join at 6:30 as well. Mike DiStefano with Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star. You listen to OverDrive on TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. OverDrive continues up on TSN 4 and on TSN 1050. Mike DiStefano filling in for Hazy B. Got my main man, Dave Feschuk, in for the Toronto Star. And I've been somewhere else all week. I've been hiding, and it's time for you guys to tell us where I have been hiding all week. Call us now at 416-870-1050. The first caller through with the correct location of where I was will win a pair of tickets to see the Leafs and Islanders on December 21st. Bud's Islanders tickets, December 21st. Call now, and first one through will get themselves a pair of tickets. Some news with the Islanders. You see they sent down Pierre Engvall today, former Maple Leaf.
Saw that.
So, I don't know.
One of those favorites.
I still cannot believe they gave him that 7 years, $3 million AAV for Pierre Engvall. Which makes no sense because, so he had the size that Lou likes, but he did not play up to his size ever.
Never saw it.
Never. It's like, what did Lou love about Pierre Engvall? I'll never understand. Never understand it.
Well, I don't think Patrick Waugh understood it either. Cause
clearly not.
I think he's part of the reason why we had that Patrick Waugh quote a couple of weeks ago of, this is the team Lou gave us, or whatever it was. It basically said, I'm not the GM. Don't blame me.
He wishes he was the GM.
You think?
He wishes. Well, he was coaching GM when he was in the Q, wasn't he? When he was in junior. Like, I get the sense that he would love to own the whole operation in the NHL.
I think you're dead right. That's always been the MO, or that's always been the reputation.
Well, would the Islanders be open to that, you think?
Well, I don't think Lou will be open to it.
Well, I mean, if they get rid of Lou, like do they find someone else? Or do they maybe give Patty Waugh an opportunity to run the whole operation?
We haven't seen Coach GM for quite some time in this league, right? Like it's too big a job.
Pat Quinn did it
both, yeah.
Here.
Pat Quinn did it here,
yeah.
And that was 20 plus years ago when Richard Petty, the CEO, said it's too big a job for one man. And now it's a job that is done by multiple people.
Yeah,
more than two. You got more than one coach. You got many more general managers in terms of assistants and cap specialists and scouting specialists.
Well, that's a big difference too between now and when it was done prior. We're living in a salary cap world, and you got to know numbers backwards and forwards. And maybe Patty Waugh's a savant when it comes to the calculations. Maybe he's Rain Man, but I would imagine that that could be a bit of a hindrance. I mean, ultimately, he's a good coach, so he should just focus on coaching. But they got to get some help. That's not a good team out there on the island.
Yeah,
not a good team.
It's a roster problem more than it's a coaching problem, right? And that's pretty obvious. But man, you look around the league, like the Leafs are playing two teams this weekend. Al's brother,
same issues.
Same issues. Can you really blame the coaching in Detroit and Buffalo?
Detroit's a really strange one for me. I look at that team and it just looks like a mismatch of play. Like there's no identity to that group. No identity at all.
5 years into the Yzer plan.
Yeah,
that's too well.
It's there's a lot of question marks with the Yzer plan, and yeah, Leafs and Red Wings are going to get in action tomorrow night. Then the following evening they'll be playing Buffalo. I'd imagine we don't see Anthony Stolarz, who's day to day. Dennis Hildeby was called up. I'd imagine he'll get one of those games. We can continue this conversation in the second hour, but Luke Wilson going to join us. Still got our Overdrive picks and Javon Shepard. Hour number 3 of Overdrive coming up next.